Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the massive space station grow larger in the main display screen. Unity Prime stretched across space like a giant metal flower, with 5 arms reaching out from its center, core. Each arm belonged to one of the 5 species that ruled the galaxy through the Galactic Council. Jake had seen pictures before, but nothing prepared him for the real size of this place. It was bigger than most human cities, and it floated in the dark between stars like a monument to alien power. Dr. Lisa Carter walked up beside him, carrying a tablet filled with notes about today's meeting. She had spent 3 years studying the council species and their ways of doing business. Her red hair was pulled back tight, and her green eyes showed both excitement and worry. Today would decide if humans became full members of the council or if they would remain outsiders forever. Admiral Peter Hayes joined them near the front window. His gray uniform was perfect, and his medals caught the light from the station ahead. He had fought in the border wars before humans met aliens, and his experience showed in how he watched everything around them. Peter never trusted easily, and he had told Jake many times that something felt wrong about this whole process. The Liberty moved slowly toward the docking bay assigned to human ships. Other vessels from across the galaxy were already docked at Unity Prime. Jake could see the long needle ships of the Zephyrians with their smooth silver hulls that seemed to bend light around them. The Vex Collective ships looked like giant insects, with multiple sections connected by tubes and covered in what looked like black armor. Energy beings called the Luminal traveled in ships that glowed with inner light and seemed to pulse like living hearts. The Deep Star Federation used ships that looked like they belonged underwater with flowing curves and blue-green coloring. The crystalline ships of the hegemony of Korth were the strangest of all, looking like someone had grown them from giant gems. As the Liberty connected to the docking port, Jake felt a small vibration through the deck plates. They were here at last. 3 years of work had led to this moment. Earth had shared its medical knowledge that saved millions of alien lives. Human engineers had helped build terraforming machines that turned dead worlds into garden planets. Even Earth's military had given the Council new weapon designs to help protect peaceful species from raiders and pirates. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Ambassador Alex Turner stepped through, followed by his team of diplomats. Alex was tall and thin, with dark hair going gray at the edges. He had spent most of his life talking to difficult people and making deals that helped everyone win. If anyone could get humans full membership in the Council, it would be Alex. They walked through corridors that were built to accommodate many different types of beings. The walls curved up high overhead, and the floor was made of some material that felt soft under their feet but never showed wear marks. Lights came from everywhere and nowhere, making shadows impossible. The air smelled clean, but with a metallic taste that reminded everyone they were breathing recycled atmosphere. Other beings moved through the corridors, going about their business. Jake saw a group of Zephyrians gliding along without seeming to touch the ground. Their large heads held brains that could read thoughts, and their pale blue skin seemed to glow with inner light. A cluster of Vex workers scuttled past, making clicking sounds to each other. They looked like giant ants walking on their back legs, and their compound eyes reflected the corridor lights in hundreds of tiny rainbows. The human delegation reached the council chamber after walking for nearly 10 minutes through the station. The chamber was a huge round room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. 5 curved desks were arranged in a circle, with the human desk positioned between the Zephyrian and Luminal sections. Each desk was designed for the species that would sit there. The human desk looked almost plain compared to the others, but Jake found it comfortable when he took his seat. Council member species took their places as the session began. The Zephyrian representative was a female named Silthara, who spoke directly into everyone's minds instead of using her mouth. Her mental voice sounded like music made of silver bells. The Vex sent their speaker Kixthar, who communicated through rapid clicking sounds that were translated by machines. The luminal representative appeared as a shifting ball of golden light that pulsed in patterns to show meaning. Deep Star sent Ambassador Flowing Current, whose blue-green skin was covered in patterns that changed color as he spoke. The Korth representative looked like a walking statue made of purple crystal that rang like a bell when it moved. The meeting started with a review of everything humans had done during their 3 years as probationary members. Silthara spoke, of how human medical advances had helped cure a plague on Zephyrian colony worlds. Kixthar clicked approvingly about human engineering work on Vex mining platforms. Each species had something good to say about human contributions to the galaxy. But Jake noticed something strange. The alien representatives kept looking at each other in ways that felt planned. When one finished speaking, another would begin almost before the translation finished. Their timing was too perfect. Alex caught it too and raised an eyebrow at Jake when he thought no one was looking. Dr. Lisa Carter was taking notes on her tablet, but she kept glancing up at the Zephyrian representative. Silthera's mental barriers were stronger than usual. Normally, Zephyrians allowed surface thoughts to be sensed by others as a sign of trust and openness. Today, Silthera's mind felt like a locked door. The discussion continued for several hours, with each council species asking questions about human plans and goals. Some questions seemed normal, but others felt like they were fishing for specific information. When Admiral Peter Hayes described Earth's defensive capabilities, several aliens leaned forward with what seemed like too much interest. As the day wore on, Jake began to feel like they were being studied rather than evaluated. The council members asked about human population numbers, manufacturing capacity, and military organization. They wanted to know about human colonies and how fast Earth could build new ships. These seemed like strange questions for a membership review. The vote came. Near the end of the session, each council species announced their decision in order. The Zephyrians voted yes. The Vex clicked their approval. The Luminal pulsed agreement. Deep Star flowed acceptance. The Korth rang their consent. Humans were now full members of the Galactic Council. Everyone stood and made the appropriate gestures of celebration, but something felt wrong. The aliens seemed relieved rather than happy. Their congratulations felt hollow, like actors reading lines from a script. Jake shook hands with beings who had appendages instead of hands and accepted mental touches from those who communicated that way. But under the surface, he sensed something dark waiting. As the human delegation prepared to leave Unity Prime, Jake looked back at the council chamber. The 5 alien species were already talking among themselves in ways that seemed urgent and secretive. Whatever had just happened, Jake was certain it was not what it appeared to be. Humanity had won full membership, but somehow Jake felt like they had just walked into a trap that was about to close around them. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council as full members, but the celebration had faded quickly. Captain Ryan Brooks sat in his command chair aboard the UES Horizon watching sensor readings that made no sense. According to official council records, the planet below them was empty of intelligent life and had been that way for thousands of years. The sensors told a different story. Dr. Susan Clark looked up from her archaeological scanner with confusion written across her face. Her brown hair was tied back in a practical ponytail, and dirt stained her work clothes from the morning expedition. To the surface, she had been studying alien ruins for most of her career, but what they found on Kepler 442b was unlike anything in the official databases. The ruins stretched across several square kilometers in patterns that looked almost human in their design. Straight roads connected rectangular buildings that were arranged around central squares. The proportions felt right for beings about the same size as humans. Most alien architecture was either too big or too small, or built for creatures that did not walk upright. These buildings looked like they could have been designed by human city planners. Susan had run dating tests on the building materials 3 times because she could not believe the results. The structures were only 500 years old, not thousands. That meant they had been built long after this world was supposed to be empty. Someone had been living here recently in galactic terms, and the council either did not know about it or was lying. Back on Earth, intelligence analyst Nicole White was having her own problems with official council information. She worked in a small office building in Geneva that housed Earth's Council Intelligence Division. Her job was to monitor communications between council species and look for potential problems. What she was finding was more than just potential problems. Nicole had been tracking unusual message traffic between the 5 council species for the past 2 months. The communications were heavily encrypted and routed through multiple relay stations to hide their origin. She could not break the encryption, but the pattern of messages worried her. Every time Earth made a request for assistance or tried to start a new trade agreement, the message traffic increased. The breakthrough came when Nicole noticed that certain words appeared in unencrypted headers. Words like timeline and containment and final phase showed up too often to be coincidence. Most disturbing was a code designation that appeared in dozens of messages, Protocol 7. Nicole tried to research Protocol 7 through official channels, but hit wall after wall of restricted access and security clearances she did not have. When she asked her supervisor about it, he told her to focus on other projects. When she kept asking questions, she was suddenly transferred to a different department that handled routine trade disputes. Lieutenant Commander Chris Anderson was stationed at Research Complex Gamma 7, a joint council facility where scientists from all member species worked together on projects that were supposed to benefit everyone. Chris was there as Earth's military liaison to make sure human interests were protected. What he saw during his night shift duties made him question everything he thought he knew about the council. Chris was walking through the facility's central hub when he heard voices coming from Conference Room Alpha. The room was supposed to be empty at this time of night, but light was coming from under the door. Chris moved closer and recognized the voices of high-ranking officials from all 5 council species. They were speaking in galactic standard so Chris could understand every word. The Zephyrian was saying something about human expansion rates being faster than projected. The Vex representative clicked about manufacturing capacity exceeding estimates. The Luminal pulsed concerns about human military innovation. Deep Star worried about human adaptability. The Korth representative rang warnings about human influence on younger species. Then Chris heard words that made his blood run cold. The Zephyrian said that humans were becoming a threat to Council stability, faster than anyone had expected. The timeline for Protocol 7 would need to be moved up. They could not wait for humans to become strong enough to resist. Chris recorded everything on his personal communicator and tried to leave quietly, but the Vex's compound eyes were designed to detect motion. Kixthar's head turned toward the door, and Chris ran. He made it back to his quarters without being caught, but he knew he was in danger. The next morning, he put in for emergency leave and took the first transport back to Earth. Dr. Lisa Carter was working at the Council's main research facility on Unity Prime when she made her own disturbing discovery. She had been assigned to a project studying human genetic material that Earth had provided for medical research. The project was supposed to help develop treatments for diseases that affected multiple species. Lisa was running standard analysis procedures when she noticed something wrong with the research parameters. The tests being run were not medical in nature. They were weapons research. Someone was using human DNA samples to develop biological agents that would target humans specifically. The research data showed multiple approaches to creating pathogens that would be harmless to Council species, but deadly to humans. Lisa copied the data onto a secure storage device and checked the project authorization codes. The project had been approved by representatives from all 5 Council species. This was not the work of one rogue scientist or a single species acting alone. This was an official Council project with the goal of creating weapons to kill humans. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Brooks and Dr. Susan Clark were making more discoveries on Kepler 442b. They had found a section of ruins that contained what looked like a library or data storage facility. Susan's team managed to activate some of the alien computers using portable power units. The data they found changed everything. The beings who had lived on this world called themselves the Kalari. According to their records, they had been a peaceful species that developed space travel about 800 years ago. They had made contact with the Galactic Council and applied for membership just like humans had done. The Council had accepted them and the Kalari had shared their technology and knowledge freely. Then the troubles began. The Kalari found themselves facing increasing restrictions and regulations that applied only to them. Their trade agreements were modified without their consent. Their colonies received no help when disasters struck. When the Kalari began to question Council policies, they were told they were too young a species to understand galactic politics. The final entries in the Kalari database told a story of systematic destruction. The Council had declared the Kalari to be a threat to galactic stability due to their rapid expansion and aggressive nature. A joint council fleet had attacked Kalari worlds without warning using weapons that targeted Kalari biology specifically. The entire species had been wiped out in less than a year. Ryan sent the data back to Earth using an encrypted channel that bypassed council communication networks. The message reached Admiral Peter Hayes, who immediately called an emergency meeting with Earth's leadership. President Martha Evans read the report in her secure office deep under the mountains of Colorado. The evidence was clear. The council had committed genocide before, and they were planning to do it again. Nicole White's investigation finally bore fruit when she managed to intercept a partial council transmission. The encryption had been damaged during transmission, allowing her to decode fragments of the message. The words she read made her hands shake as she typed her report. Human population growth exceeds acceptable parameters. Military capabilities. Developing beyond projected timelines. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. Target date moved to next solar cycle. All assets in position. Final solution authorized. The message was signed with authorization codes from all 5 council species. There was no doubt about the meaning. The council was planning to destroy humanity, just as they had destroyed the Kalari. The only question was when they would strike. Earth's intelligence services worked through the night analyzing all the evidence. The pattern was clear once they knew what to look for. The council had used the same approach with the Kalari that they were using with humans. Grant membership to promising species, then find excuses to eliminate them before they became too powerful to control. Admiral Peter Hayes called Jake Morrison and Alex Turner back to Earth for an emergency briefing. When they arrived at the secure facility in Colorado, they found Earth's leadership preparing for war. The false peace was over. Humanity now knew that their new allies were actually their executioners. The council had made one critical mistake. They had given humans time to prepare, and humans were very good at learning from their enemies' plans. The trap was closing, but humanity was no longer walking blindly into it. Earth's factories were all ready, retooling to build weapons instead of peaceful trade goods. Human colonies were receiving secret shipments of military equipment disguised as normal supplies. The council thought they were dealing with naive newcomers who would go quietly to their destruction. They were about to learn that humans fight hardest when their survival is threatened. Admiral Peter Hayes stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface, watching displays that showed the movement of ships throughout human space. Red icons marked council vessels that had appeared in systems where they had no business being. Intelligence reports were coming in from human colonies across the galaxy, and the picture they painted was clear. The council was moving into position for a coordinated strike. President Martha Evans entered the command center, followed by her top military advisors. Her face was grim as she reviewed the latest intelligence summaries. 3 years of careful preparation were about to be tested. While the council thought they were dealing with trusting newcomers, humanity had been building hidden defenses and preparing for exactly this situation. The first warning came from the outer colonies. Commander Jake Morrison received an urgent transmission from the mining world of New Pittsburgh. The colony administrator reported that council ships had been detected at the edge of their system using some kind of scanning equipment. When human patrol ships moved to investigate, the alien vessels had jumped away without explanation. Similar reports came from a dozen other worlds. Council ships were appearing everywhere, conducting what they claimed were routine surveys and scientific studies. But the pattern was wrong. The aliens were mapping human defenses and looking for weaknesses. They were preparing to attack. Dr. Lisa Carter was still on Unity Prime when she intercepted a communication that confirmed their worst fears. The council had accelerated their timeline. Protocol 7 would begin in 72 hours. All human worlds would be hit simultaneously with weapons designed to kill every human, while leaving the planet suitable for colonization by council species. Lisa managed to send a coded message to Earth before council security forces arrived at her quarters. She was taken into custody for violating research protocols, but her warning had already reached Admiral Hayes. The countdown had begun. Captain Ryan Brooks was leading a patrol squadron near the edge of human space when his sensors detected something massive moving through hyperspace. The signature was unlike anything in the databases, but it was heading directly toward Sol system. Ryan ordered his ships to intercept, and what they found made his blood run cold. A council fleet of over 200 ships was moving toward Earth. The vessels included massive dreadnoughts from all 5 species armed with planet-killer weapons. At the center of the formation was a ship that Ryan had never seen before. It was huge even by alien standards, and energy readings suggested it carried enough firepower to sterilize an entire world. Ryan's communications officer managed to penetrate the alien fleet's security and download their operational orders. The documents confirmed everything Earth's intelligence had discovered. The Council planned to destroy not just Earth but every human colony simultaneously. They called it a cleansing operation to remove a dangerous species before it could threaten galactic stability. But the Council had made a critical error. They assumed humans would react like the Kalari and other species they had eliminated in the past. They expected humans to panic and scatter when faced with overwhelming force. The aliens had studied human history, but they had focused on human wars against each other. They had not understood what happened when humans faced extinction from an outside threat. Admiral Kate Sullivan received her orders while commanding the defense fleet hidden behind Luna. For 3 years, her ships had been disguised as cargo haulers and research vessels. In reality, they were the most advanced warships humanity had ever built. Their weapons systems were based on captured alien technology that human engineers had improved and adapted. The human ships moved out from their hiding places throughout the solar system. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as asteroid mining stations powered up their railguns and particle beam arrays. Defense satellites that looked like communication relays revealed missile launchers and energy shields. Earth had been turned into a fortress without the Council realizing it. The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace expecting to find an unprepared world defended by primitive ships. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated defense network that had been waiting for them. The first Council ships to emerge from hyperspace ran directly into a minefield that had been seeded with antimatter charges. The explosions lit up space like new stars as alien dreadnoughts were torn apart by forces they had not expected humans to possess. Admiral Sullivan's battle fleet emerged from behind the moon with their weapons already charged and targeting systems locked onto enemy ships. The aliens found themselves under attack before they could organize their assault. The battle for Earth lasted 6 hours and changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about human military capabilities. Council ships that had seemed invincible were cut apart by human weapons that combined alien technology with human innovation. The energy beings of the Luminal found their ships drained by human power dampeners. Zephyrian mind control systems were blocked by mental shields that human psionics had developed in secret. But the real shock came when the Council's superweapon tried to fire on Earth. The massive ship had been built to crack planets open and boil away their atmospheres. When it charged its main weapon, human scientists activated a device they had been building since the first day they joined the Council. A gravitational field generator created a localized black hole that swallowed the alien superweapon and everything around it. Captain Ryan Brooks led fighter squadrons against Vex swarm ships that relied on numbers and coordination. Human pilots used tactics developed from studying insect behavior to disrupt the alien formations. They targeted the command ships that controlled each swarm, causing entire formations to break apart in confusion. The crystalline ships of the Korth hegemony seemed almost indestructible, until human engineers activated sonic weapons that shattered their hulls like glass. The aquatic ships of the Deep Star Federation found themselves facing weapons that boiled the water in their life support systems. Every Council species discovered that humans had studied their weaknesses and prepared countermeasures. Admiral Peter Hayes watched the battle from Earth's command center as alien ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. The Council fleet that was supposed to wipe out humanity had been shattered. But this was only the beginning. Reports were coming in from human colonies throughout the galaxy that local Council forces were attacking according to the original plan. The real war was just starting. On New Pittsburgh, Colonel Danny Roberts led colonial militia against Vex, ground forces that had landed expecting to find defenseless civilians. Instead, they found humans who had been training for this day for 3 years. The colonists used their knowledge of local terrain and human weapons to turn the mining tunnels into death traps for the invading aliens. Dr. Susan Clark was on the archaeological world of Kepler 442b when Zephyrian ships arrived to eliminate the human research team. But Susan's people were not helpless scientists. They had been using the abandoned Kalari technology to build weapons and defenses. When the aliens landed, they found themselves facing energy weapons that could penetrate their mental shields and disrupt their telepathic abilities. On the industrial world of New Detroit, Commander Beth Turner activated automated defense systems that had been hidden in the factory complexes. Robot soldiers emerged from assembly lines to fight against Deep Star amphibious troops. The aliens had expected to capture human manufacturing facilities intact, but found themselves fighting machines that knew every corridor and access tunnel. The pattern repeated across human space. Every colony had been preparing for this attack. Every human world had hidden weapons and trained defenders. The Council had planned to eliminate humanity quickly and quietly, but instead found themselves fighting a species that had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. Lieutenant Nicole White coordinated intelligence operations from a hidden facility on Earth as reports came in from the fighting. The Council's communication networks were being jammed by human electronic warfare systems. Alien commanders were losing contact with their forces and falling back on rigid tactical doctrines that human strategists had studied and learned to counter. The aliens had started this war believing they were hunting a weak species that posed a potential future threat. They discovered too late that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they had imagined. Humans did not just fight to win battles. When their survival was threatened, they fought to destroy any force that dared to threaten them. The Council had wanted to eliminate humanity before it became dangerous. Their attack had turned every human into a weapon pointed directly at the heart of alien civilization. The Council's attempt to destroy humanity had failed completely, but the alien leadership refused to accept defeat. From Unity, prime emergency orders went out to every Council world calling for total mobilization. The 5 species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia would not allow a young race to threaten their dominance. They committed every ship and every soldier to finishing what they had started. Colonel Danny Roberts stood on the command deck of the human assault ship UES Retribution as it approached the Vex home system. 3 months had passed since the failed attack on Earth, and humanity had spent that time building an invasion fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human factories worked around the clock producing ships and weapons based on technology captured from defeated Council forces. The Vex Collective had made the mistake of trying to hold their conquered human colonies instead of retreating to defend their core worlds. Human ground forces had retaken every occupied planet while learning how Vex military systems worked. Now Danny was leading the counterattack straight into the heart of insectoid space. Dr. Susan Clark worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the science vessel UES Discovery as it followed the invasion fleet. The archaeological data from the Kalari ruins had revealed more than just the story of one extinct species. Hidden in the ancient databases were weapon designs created specifically to fight each Council race. The Kalari had been preparing for a war they never got to fight, but humans would finish what they had started. Susan's team had reverse-engineered Kalari sonic weapons that could shatter crystalline structures at the molecular level. They had built electromagnetic pulse generators that disrupted the energy matrices that luminal beings used for consciousness. Most importantly, they had developed biological weapons that targeted the specific genetic markers of each Council species. Commander Beth Turner coordinated the mass production effort from orbital factories around Earth that had been built inside hollowed-out asteroids. The facilities were protected by defensive systems that made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. Human engineers worked alongside automated systems to produce weapons and ships faster than any organic species could match. Beth's factories were turning out new ship designs that combined the best features of human and alien technology. Human creativity had taken Council engineering concepts and improved them in ways the original designers had never imagined. Faster engines, stronger shields, and weapons that could adapt to any target were rolling off the production lines in numbers that shocked even human planners. Admiral Kate Sullivan led the main battle fleet toward the Zephyrian home system, while coordinating attacks on multiple fronts. Human forces were advancing on all 5 Council species simultaneously. The aliens had expected to fight a defensive war, but found themselves being invaded on their own worlds by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. The Zephyrians had always relied on their telepathic abilities to control their enemies, but human psionics had developed countermeasures during their time in the Council. When Zephyrian mind controllers tried to take over human ship crews, they found their thoughts reflected back at them by mental shields that turned their own powers against them. Captain Ryan Brooks commanded a squadron of stealth ships that had infiltrated the luminal home system. The energy beings lived in massive structures that floated in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant. They had thought themselves safe from physical attack since most species could not operate in their environment. Human engineers had built ships that could function in the crushing gravity and corrosive atmosphere of the luminal world. Ryan's ships released specially designed weapons that disrupted the energy fields that held luminal society together. The beings that had seemed almost godlike in their power found themselves scattered and helpless as their civilization collapsed around them. Some tried to flee to other dimensions, but human scientists had learned to track energy signatures across multiple levels of reality. The Deep Star Federation discovered that their underwater cities offered no protection against human submarine warfare. Admiral Peter Hayes led an aquatic assault force using vehicles designed from captured Deep Star technology. Human forces attacked from above and below simultaneously, while sonic weapons turned the ocean depths into killing zones that no aquatic being could survive. The crystalline hegemony of Korth had built their cities inside the cores of asteroids, believing that solid rock would protect them from any attack. They learned otherwise when human mining equipment was converted into siege weapons that could drill through any material. Once the outer defenses were breached, sonic charges shattered their crystal-based technology and left their cities in ruins. Lieutenant Nicole White coordinated psychological warfare operations that turned the Council's own propaganda against them. Human hackers had penetrated alien communication networks and were broadcasting the truth about Council genocide programs to every species in the galaxy. Younger races that had looked up to the Council as protectors learned that their heroes were actually mass murderers. The revelation caused uprisings throughout Council space as subject species realized they might be next on the elimination list. The 5 ruling races found themselves fighting rebellions on hundreds of worlds while trying to hold off the human advance. Their empire was collapsing from within as former allies turned against them. Dr. Lisa Carter had been rescued from Unity Prime when human special forces raided the station. She now worked with teams of human scientists to develop new weapons based on captured Council research. The aliens had spent centuries studying ways to kill other species, but they had never considered that their victims might turn those same weapons against them. Lisa's team created viruses that targeted Zephyrian neural pathways, causing their telepathic abilities to turn inward and destroy their own minds. They developed bacteria that consumed the organic components of Vex exoskeletons, leaving the insectoids helpless. Chemical weapons designed for deep star physiology turned their own bodily fluids toxic, while biological agents caused Korth crystal structures to grow out of control until they collapsed under their own weight. The war reached its turning point when human forces captured Unity Prime itself. The massive station that had been the symbol of Council power was taken by Marines, led by Commander Jake Morrison. The aliens had fortified their headquarters, but they had not prepared for attackers who understood their technology better than they did. Human engineers shut down the station's defenses from the inside, while assault troops fought through corridors filled with desperate alien defenders. The 5 Council chambers were breached simultaneously, and the surviving alien leadership was captured alive. For the first time in galactic history, the species that had ruled through fear found themselves at the mercy of their intended victims. President Martha Evans addressed the galaxy from the captured Council chambers, with the alien leaders standing behind her in restraints. Her message was broadcast to every world and every species that had lived under Council rule. The age of alien dominance was over. Humanity had proven that the Council could be defeated, and their victims had been avenged. But the human president made it clear that this was not about replacing one tyrant with another. The humans offered freedom to every species that had been oppressed by the Council. Former subject races were invited to join a new galactic alliance based on equality and mutual respect, rather than fear and domination. The 5 council species that had started the war were given a choice. They could face trial for genocide and crimes against multiple species, or they could accept supervised rehabilitation programs designed to change their societies from within. Most chose rehabilitation rather than face the justice they had denied to others. Admiral Kate Sullivan oversaw the dismantling of Council military forces, while ensuring that peaceful ships and defensive systems remained intact. Human forces occupied strategic positions throughout former Council space, but they came as liberators rather than conquerors. The galaxy was being rebuilt according to human principles of justice tempered by mercy. The war that the Council had started to eliminate, a potential threat, had ended with their own destruction. Humanity had not just survived the attempted genocide, but had used it as an opportunity to free every oppressed species in the galaxy. The aliens had awakened something they could not control, and learned too late that humans fight hardest when they are fighting for others, as well as themselves. 2 years had passed since the last Council stronghold fell to human forces, and the galaxy was learning to live under a new order. President Martha Evans stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species in the Great Hall that had been built where Unity Prime once floated. The old station had been dismantled and its materials used to construct something that truly represented all the beings who called this galaxy home. Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the new station, observing how different it felt from the old Council headquarters. The walls were transparent in many places, allowing natural light from nearby stars to illuminate the passages. Representatives from dozens of species moved freely through areas that had once been restricted to the ruling 5. Young beings from newly independent worlds learned alongside humans in schools that taught cooperation instead of domination. Dr. Lisa Carter was leading one of the most important projects in galactic history. Her team worked with scientists from every known species to investigate the true extent of Council crimes against galactic civilization. They had discovered evidence of 12 extinct species that had been eliminated by the Council over the past 1,000 years. Each one had been destroyed for the same reason. They had shown potential to challenge alien authority. The memorials built for these lost civilizations filled an entire section of the new station. Lisa walked among displays that showed what little remained of species that might have contributed great things to galactic knowledge. The Kalari were represented by their architectural achievements and the weapons they had designed but never got to use. Other species left behind art, music, and scientific discoveries that the Council had tried to erase from history. Captain Ryan Brooks commanded exploration fleets that were mapping regions of space the Council had declared forbidden. What they found challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about the universe. Hidden civilizations that had avoided Council contact were emerging from hiding. Ancient ruins suggested that intelligent life was far older and more widespread than anyone had imagined. One of the most significant discoveries came when Ryan's ships found a massive structure floating in the void between galaxies. The builders were long gone, but their technology was far beyond anything the Council had possessed. Initial investigations suggested that this ancient civilization had been monitoring galactic development for millions of years. They had left behind warnings about threats that existed beyond the edges of known space. Commander Beth Turner oversaw the conversion of former Council military facilities into centers for peaceful cooperation. Weapons factories became research laboratories, where scientists from multiple species worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Warship construction yards were retooled to build exploration vessels and colony ships for species that wanted to expand beyond their home systems. The economic transformation was as dramatic as the political changes. Under Council rule, younger species had been forced to trade their raw materials for finished goods at rates that kept them dependent on their alien masters. Human economists introduced fair trade agreements that allowed every species to develop their own manufacturing capabilities and compete on equal terms. Dr. Susan Clark led archaeological teams that were uncovering the true history of galactic civilization. Council records had been deliberately falsified to hide their crimes and make their rule seem legitimate. The real history showed cycles of conquest and liberation stretching back millions of years. The Council had been neither the first nor the most powerful civilization to attempt galactic domination. Susan's most important discovery was a hidden archive left by a species called the Guardians, who had ruled the galaxy long before the Council existed. The Guardians had faced the same choice that now confronted humanity: use their power to dominate others or guide them toward independence. The archive contained detailed records of what happened when civilizations chose different paths. Colonel Lay. Danny Roberts was training the first graduates of the new Galactic Defense Academy. Young beings from dozens of species learned together how to protect their worlds from external threats without becoming threats themselves. The curriculum emphasized protection of the innocent and cooperation between different military traditions. Human tactical doctrines were taught alongside alien strategies to create a defensive force that could handle any challenge. The most difficult task fell to Lieutenant Nicole White, who led the Truth and Reconciliation Commission investigating Council war crimes. Her teams worked with survivors from attacked worlds to document exactly what had happened during the genocide campaigns. The evidence was overwhelming, but Nicole insisted on complete accuracy because the galaxy needed to understand how such evil had been allowed to flourish. The trials of Council leaders were conducted with scrupulous fairness despite calls for immediate execution from some species. Former Council members were judged by representatives from all their victims, with humans serving as neutral arbitrators. Most were sentenced to life imprisonment, but some who cooperated with investigators received reduced sentences in exchange for revealing hidden atrocities. The Zephyrian leadership faced special challenges because their telepathic abilities made traditional imprisonment difficult. Human psionics worked with alien mind healers to develop rehabilitation programs that could change fundamental thought patterns. The goal was not punishment, but prevention of future crimes, by removing the mental structures that allowed beings to commit genocide. Admiral Peter Hayes oversaw the integration of former Council military technology into the new Galactic Defense Network. Human engineers reverse-engineered the most useful alien innovations while discarding weapons designed specifically for oppression. The result was a defensive capability that could protect every member world without threatening anyone's independence. The new constitution that governed galactic civilization was written by representatives from every known species, with humans serving as mediators when disputes arose. The document established principles that had never existed under Council rule: the right of every species to self-determination, protection from extinction, and access to knowledge that could improve their lives. President Martha Evans addressed the galaxy on the second anniversary of liberation with a message that was broadcast to every inhabited world. She spoke of the progress that had been made, but also of the challenges that lay ahead. The galaxy was larger and more dangerous than anyone had realized. Ancient warnings suggested that threats existed beyond the edges of explored space that would require all species working together to survive. The speech concluded with the dedication of the memorial to lost voices, where the names of every extinct species were carved in materials donated by their former home worlds. Above the memorial stood words written in every known language. Never again shall the strong prey upon the weak. Never again shall knowledge be used to destroy rather than create. Never again shall any being face extinction alone. Captain Ryan Brooks stood with his crew on the observation deck of their new ship as it prepared to leave on another exploration mission. The galaxy they were mapping was nothing like the one described in Council histories. Wonders and dangers waited among the stars that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the universe. But whatever they found out there, they would face it together as equals rather than as rulers and subjects. Dr. Lisa Carter published the final report on Council crimes with a warning that resonated throughout the galaxy. The capacity for evil existed in every species, including humans. Eternal vigilance was the price of freedom, and every generation would face the choice between justice and oppression. The victory over the Council was not an ending, but a beginning of the eternal struggle to build a civilization worthy of the stars. The galaxy that emerged from the ashes of Council tyranny was neither perfect nor finished. Old prejudices died. Hard and new conflicts arose as species learned to interact as equals. But the fundamental principle had been established. No being had the right to determine the fate of another species. Power would be shared rather than hoarded, and knowledge would be used to lift up rather than tear down. Children born after liberation grew up in a universe where the strong protected the weak rather than exploiting them. They learned the history of the dark years when the Council ruled through fear, but they also learned that evil could be defeated by beings willing to fight for justice. The galaxy belonged to all who lived in it, and would be defended by all who called it home. The stars that had once looked down on a galaxy divided by fear and hatred now witnessed a civilization that dared to hope for something better. Humanity had sparked the change, but every species contributed to building the future they would share. The Council's betrayal had indeed sparked humanity's wrath, but that wrath had burned away the old order to make room for something new. The galaxy would never again mistake human compassion for weakness or human cooperation for submission. Those who sought to rule through fear would find themselves facing the combined might of every species that had chosen freedom over tyranny.